Good afternoon and welcome to Motivation Speaks with Angel Ferguson. Today is September the 10th, 2017, and this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, as I am coming to you live in Tampa. And as you may know, that we have been under some inclement weather, but we know that God has everything under his control. And we wanted to not do a recorded show, a recorded podcast today, but if God would allow us to come live, then we would follow his directions. And so here we are. We would love to connect with you. Our email address is afergusonwrp@yahoo.com. Our mailing address is 7402 North 56th Street, Suite A and B, Tampa, Florida 33617. Our phone number is 813-336-2181. And we would love to connect with you via our social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Google. You can also listen to episodes of our podcast via our YouTube channel, on iTunes, as well as iHeartRadio under The Balance of Life. And what we wanted to do today is to bring some words of encouragement, not for just this appointed time, but throughout our life. And I do know that we have been looking at the prophets in the Old Testament, and I have been reading in Daniel. And I know that we were talking about Solomon yesterday, but I was led over into Daniel, just the trials and tribulations that Daniel went through, as well as the other three who came with him, amongst many others, over into Babylon. And here we are today, and there's something that I just want to encourage your heart today, that the purpose, our purpose, and through the Word of God, is to encourage God's people that during a crisis period, any crisis, it is for the edification of God, that you are prepared not just for that moment, for beyond that moment. So we wanted to share some encouraging words with you to recognize the crisis, thank God for it, and understand it, and therefore be able to look beyond the crisis. And as we dive into Daniel, there are several teachings where no matter what was up against Daniel and the other three, their Hebrew names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but their God-given names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and as well as Daniel. And their names had meanings. Daniel's name means God is my judge. Hananiah, the Lord has been gracious. Mishael, who is equal to God. And Azariah, the Lord has helped. And here we find in the very first circumstances, what I find intriguing about this is that during this time, several people, there was a whole captivity that Jehoiakim, king of Judah, had into his hand. And we're going to start at the first. It says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasures house of God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, in whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And yesterday, as we talked about, when God appoints you, when you are anointed for a purpose, when you are anointed for a position, here we find that although the children of Judah were in captivity, they were besieged, they were also anointed for this purpose. They were anointed for the position that God now has for them. And out of all of the children, there were other children who were well educated and were fitting, but the 4 of them were selected. And it goes on to say, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. Now here is where their names were changed. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Now those names also had meanings. Belshazzar was Belchief, god of Babylon, protector of life. And where Hananiah's name was changed to Shadrach, it meant servant. Where Mishael, whose name was changed to Meshach, the shadow of the prince, or who is this, and Azariah, whose name was changed to Abednego, servant of Neo, the god of wisdom, or the morning star. And here's the first test. And our subject today is tested, released, and delivered in the midst of the storm. And here's where we find ourselves, that we are tested. It is our faith. It is our maturity in Christ that we must rely on when tests and trials come. And naturally in the flesh, because we are human, we question our stance, our presence, or what we're supposed to do. But if you are really in Christ, that reminder should come of who you serve and who has taken care of you until this point, that he will never leave us nor forsake us. Our tests and our trials, they come to make us strong. And I encourage you this day, at this time, at this moment, to walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Find yourself in the presence of God. No matter what is going on around you, find yourself in the presence of God. He knew when you were born, before you were born, and He knows when we will take our last breath. It's what we do in the meantime that matters. So find yourself in the presence of God. And pray. I pray over your mind and over your thoughts today to remove all hindering and negative thoughts. I'm not telling you not to be prepared, because even the Word of God tells us to be prepared, but your trust is in Him. Your faith is in God, not in man, because no man knows the day nor the hour but God. So find yourself in His presence. And here is where we are today when we are in the book of Daniel. Now, a part of the grooming to come before this king was that the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank. And he wanted them to be up under this provision for 3 years. Now, in the 8th verse, and even in the commentary for the 7th, it says, despite having these new names, these Jewish men resolved that they would remain loyal to the one true God. Verse 8, it says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Babylonian's moral climate was totally heathen. We can be sure that what Daniel and his friends were being taught often contradicted God's law and righteous principles. And we are all going to face those things. Are we going to believe and follow the report of God and His word, or man, so that we can fit in and not be seen as an outcast? That's a determination for the individual. The same food and wine served to King Nebuchadnezzar was served to them, food and wine that may have been offered to idols. To each such food would have disobeyed God's laws. To drink such wine would have dulled their minds because of its intoxicating effect. Number 1, Daniel made up his mind from the start not to defile himself. We all must cross that path. I'm going to follow God. He would not compromise his convictions, even if it meant death. Note that Daniel no longer had his parents around him to guide him in his decisions. His love for God and his love and his law had been so instilled into him as a child that he desired to serve the Lord from the heart. And there are times that our parents are not there, especially spiritual parents. Our natural parents are spiritual, or even our spiritual leaders. They're not always going to be there to help guide us in our directions. Here is where your relationship with God comes in. Because if I focus only on the directions of people, I'm not following the directions of God. We can go boldly to Him through a humble spirit and a repentant heart for directions and instructions. Yes, He will send those to us to confirm what He has already told us. But I want to tell you to keep your eyes on God. Let Him be your counsel. Let Him be your guide. He knows what is ahead. And sometimes we can give counsel and guidance out of self, because we are human. But is it what God said? So seek God for yourself. Know Him for yourself. Have that relationship with Him for yourself. Rely on Him. Because if God gave you something to do and you rely on the counsel of man, you have disobeyed God. And the consequences, therefore, are on you, because you did not follow God, your creator. And it goes on to say, those who are determined to remain faithful to God when confronted with temptation will be given the strength to stand firm for God. Then again, those who have not previously decided to remain true to God and His Word will find it difficult to resist sin or avoid conforming to the ways of the world. This walk with Christ is an individual walk. You must know Him and have Him in your heart for yourself. This is a day-by-day process. And if anyone comes along to tell you that it is easy, it is not. But we must keep our faith in God. And so here we find that Daniel's faith was strong in the living God that he knew. And nothing was going to come to make him waver, that not even defiling his body. And then we are taught that our bodies are the temple of God. You are to present your body as a living sacrifice. And this right here would have defiled that temple, being his body, by taking something in that was sacrificed unto things that were not holy. And the prince, now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the Eunuchs. And the prince of the Eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, meaning man. He feared man because he did not acknowledge God. God was the true and living God, was not his God. They were not brought up in those traditions. He said, who hath appointed your meat and your drink? For why should he see your faces worse like than the children which are of your sort? Remember, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were anointed and appointed for this very purpose, this very position. As our title, tested, released, and delivered in the midst of a storm. And he said, then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Here's the test. Am I going to follow the law of God? Or am I going to follow the law of man, knowing the consequences that this man could lose his life? Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the Eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our conscience be looked upon before thee, and the conscience of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented with them in this matter, and he gave them the 10 days that they requested. And at the end of the 10 days, their consciences appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. That's obedience. That's not deferring from what God has told you. That's when you do not defer from his laws, but you steadfast to his word, to his principles, and you do not waver. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now remember, this time period was for 3 years that they were to be cultivated before they even were presented to the king. And then it says, now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the musicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the 1st year of King Cyrus. Then there came a time in chapter 2 that the king had a dream. And we're going to discuss that in just a moment. And we're going to look further, if time allows, into chapter 3 of another test. So we are talking about tested, being released and delivered in the midst of the storm. If you have just joined in, you have tuned in to Motivation Speaks with Angel Ferguson. Today is September the 10th, 2017, and we would love to correspond with you. If you would like to email us, our email address is afergusonwrp@yahoo.com. Our mailing address is 7402 North 56th Street, Suite A and B, Tampa, Florida 33617. Our phone number is 813-336-2181. And if you would like to subscribe to our magazine, Hope and Truth, please visit the magazine at hopeandtruthmagazine.weebly.com. And you can subscribe to the magazine there. 12 issues priced at $36 an issue. That is for a year. So you can get 12 issues where we will mail you out the magazine to your address. And we have awesome writers. Author Kit Swanson and author Chandra Mitchell are contributing writers for the magazine, where they share words of inspiration throughout the magazine. And we offer business tips and tools, and as well as interviews within the magazine. We are talking about Daniel. We are in the book of Daniel today, and our subject is tested, released, and delivered in the midst of the storm. And if you look over your life, if you gain an understanding of the stages of your life and your walk with Christ, you will come upon tests. Those tests are meant to shape us and to mold us, to build us for the Master's use. And he will not bring anything upon us that we can't bear. That is his word. He knows what we can handle. It's how we react. We must rely on how he has equipped us and prepared us for such as times as this. But we as a people, we panic and we don't stop to think. We move and we move too fast, or we move too slow. But I want to encourage you today to take a step back Gather your thoughts, gather yourself, so that in your preparation you do not miss anything, that you do not panic and cause yourselves anxiety. Know that God has everything under control. Refer back to his word. You have his word in your heart. He said to be still and know that I am God. So prepare and pray. Stay in his presence. Know that he is God. Follow his directions. We can't follow his directions if we are in an uproar and if we're not sitting still. And that's what that be quiet means, where it says to be quiet, to be still and know that I am God. That is your spirit man. That is, your spirit man needs to be in tune with God so that you can hear and you can listen to his directions so that you will know which path and road to take. Rely on those words within you. Here in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, the king had a dream. And I'm going to, with just the entire book of Daniel it's all about being tested and released and delivered in the midst of storms. Now, in this instance, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And he wanted that dream interpreted. But he said he did not remember the dream. Now the test for those that were raised in his realm and in their culture could not interpret the dream. And here's where I absolutely love. He called his astrologers and sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. And the Chaldeans and the astrologers, they said to him, well, tell us a dream and we will interpret it. And he said, the thing is gone from me, but if you will make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be, you shall receive all these gifts. But if you can't interpret it to me, ye shall be cut into pieces, and your house shall be made a dunghill. Now, here is the test in chapter 2. Daniel had no knowledge of this. And because the Chaldeans and the sorcerers and the astrologers, because they could not interpret, they couldn't tell the king what he had dreamed, he sent out a decree to kill all of them. Anyone who has knowledge or who says that they can interpret dreams and anything, kill them all. And the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, or ruler that asks such things as any magician or astrologer or Chaldeans. What they were saying is just not so. But here's something that grabs my attention, and I pray that you grab hold to this. He says, and it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the gods, whose dwelling is not with the flesh. Meaning here, they recognized it was a spiritual thing, and then that's a realm that they could not go into. They were not brought up in the culture of believing in the living God. They were not brought up in a culture of that one true living God being spiritual. But here they said, except the gods whose dwelling is not flesh. And I'm reminded where he said, every knee shall bow, and every tongue must confess that Jesus is Lord. He says even those that served other gods did not recognize, they didn't even recognize God. But here they did. They had knowledge, God, and that had to be revealed unto them. And for this cause, and I'm in the 12th verse, the 2nd chapter of Daniel, the 12th verse. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all wise men of Babylon. And the decree went out forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. And he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Once again, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were anointed and appointed for this purpose. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of God, and concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So as he sought God, which is what we are supposed to do in all things, and he waited. He waited for God to reveal to him what the king had dreamed. And here's something that is so key. When God revealed it to him, he did not run and rush to tell the king, but he honored God for revealing it to him. We are to acknowledge God in everything that we do. He said, in all things, give thanks. This is what Daniel did. He did not take credit. He did not run to talk, but he blessed the Lord from his heart. He acknowledged God. Then Daniel went and gave the interpretation. And you can find that further in the 2nd chapter of Daniel. Once again, tested, released, and delivered in the midst of the storm. He could have said, this has nothing to do with me. But he knew the God he served. So he sought the Lord, and he waited. And he touched in and agreed with his fellow companions. He went home, he touched and agreed. They got into prayer, and they waited, and God revealed those things to Daniel. That was a test. That not just those who initially could not interpret the dream, but every wise man was going to lose his life. That is a test. But in the midst of it, they were released and delivered out of the hands of the enemy. Understand once again that your test come, but to see where your faith is in God. Over in the 3rd chapter, the fiery furnace. Now in the dream, Nebuchadnezzar, it was revealed to him that his kingship, his empire, he was gold. So he created an image. And he wanted everyone to bow to that image at a certain time when music was played. He wanted everyone to bow. And here we find Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in this scene of being tested, released, and delivered in the midst of the storm. Because they served only the true and living God, and we serve the true and living God, and we shall put no other God before him. We shall not bow to any other gods, no matter the circumstances. And in the 3rd chapter, in the 16th verse, after it was said that they did not bow as the king commanded, the king approached them, and their reply was full of faith and trusting in God. Basically, the king said, if you do not bow, I'm going to put you in the fiery furnace. And he told them, there is no God that can deliver you out of my hand. But how many know that who the God you serve? Who is the God that you serve that created the heavens and earth? That created you and man as equal. And for someone else to say there is nobody who can deliver you out of my hand, you have no idea who you serve if you fall for that. You have to know who you serve. You have to know who holds all power in his hand. You have to know who allows the sun to rise and the moon to shine. You have to know who you are in Christ. And their answer was awesome. Their answer was full of faith. And they said, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. But here's what we will do. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O King. But if not, if I perish, if my life is taken, be it known unto thee, O King, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. That goes back to Job. He said, though he slay me, yet will I trust God. Even in the midst of any and everything that is going on in my life, I still have to trust God. That door that I want open might not open, but I still have to trust God. That life that I want saved and I want to extend, and I might pray and say, God, don't allow them to leave this earth right now. But even if you do, I still have to trust you because I know that you know best. God knows all. He knows best. He knows what is for us. And here we find that because of that answer, Nebuchadnezzar, he got mad. And where these men once had favor in his eyes, his conscience changed toward them. See, if I really love you, my conscience won't change because you won't go along with something I want you to do. That's not love. That's not a godly love. That's selfish. And he had the fire intensified. And here is the crop of tested, released, and delivered in the midst of the storm. Now he had men bound in their coats and in their hosen and their hats and their garments, and they were cast in the midst of the burning fire. Therefore, because it was so intensified, the flames killed those who were to put these 3 men into the fiery furnace. And it says, and these 3 men, now their names, these are their names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these are their converted names, fell down, listen to this, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. They were bound. We found where they were tested. They would not bow. They would not submit to other gods. They were bound and they fell into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire. Remember, they were bound when they went in. They were released and delivered even in the midst of their storm. Tell me that isn't God. That even in the midst of what we are going through, that we can be bound and not know which way to go or how to react, and we might feel tied down and not know how to move about. But as we keep our trust and our focus on God and not on the problem or the situation, we are released in that and we are delivered. So I ask you today, in the midst of your storm, what are you doing? Are you about your Father's business? Are you about holding true and faithful to His Word? Are you finding yourself in His Word in the midst of a storm? Because that's what it takes. That all is going on around me, but I find myself in His Word. I keep my heart in prayer. His words are, I'm meditating on His Word. I'm speaking words of encouragement to my spirit. And I'm not entertaining thoughts of negativity. But I am here according to Psalms 91. Where it says, He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 8,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder. The young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet. Because He has set His love upon me. Here's God's answer. Because you have set His love upon Him, therefore He will deliver you. He will set you on high because you have known His name. When you call upon Him, He will answer you. He will be with you in trouble. He will deliver you and honor you. With long life will God satisfy you, and He will show you His salvation. We thank you for joining us today on Motivation Speaks with Angel Ferguson. As we close each podcast, stay encouraged, encouraging others along the way. Have a blessed day. And with His grace and mercy, we will speak with you on tomorrow.